Morning, Bob. Morning, Jan.
Morning.
Morning.
How are you doing?
Good.
Yeah, very good, thanks.
We'll leave it a couple of minutes, let people come in, and then we'll get started.
Always impressed to see somebody joining from a vehicle. Great commitment there.
Hey, Vincent. It's the new way of doing things now, though, really, isn't it? You've got lots of online meetings and face-to-face meetings back in. So
yeah, I hadn't really forgot about it and just quickly pulled over at all.
That's fine.
Like I said, it really shows you committed, which is always good to see.
Right, it's past. We've got people coming in, so we've got a really busy agenda. So I'll just give it literally kind of another minute or two, and then I'll get started, and people will just kind of come in during it. So, hey, Rachel. All right, I don't want to lose too much time. So as we're recording it anyway, as people come in, if they do miss anything from the start, we can just send the recording back out. So I'll get started on it. And yeah, we can just send things back out. So hi, everyone, welcome. And, thanks for giving up time to listen to us today. Hopefully it's going to be really informative for you. We're recording the session. I hope that's okay. We can send it to you afterwards, and if you've got colleagues that might appreciate seeing it, we can just forward it on to them as well. For a bit of housekeeping, if you could just keep your microphones on mute just to stop us from getting any echoes or anything like that during it. And if you would like to put your contact details, the organisation you work for, email address, LinkedIn, anything like that in the chat, that'd be really good to help us kind of network between ourselves, but also for follow-up afterwards. So if you get the opportunity during the meeting, please just put all your details in the chat. We've got a really busy agenda, but we don't want to stop you from asking any questions. So please put questions in the chat. The presenter might be able to come back to you with, is it possible to record for a colleague? Yeah, that's fine, Rachel, it is being recorded, so we'll forward that on, no problem at all. Yeah, put your questions in the chat. And the presenter might be able to kind of reply in the chat afterwards or at the same time, but if not, we are going to have a bit of a questions and answers at the end. So if you've got a question, feel free just to put it in the chat in case you forget, or just leave it till the end and we can talk about it then. We'll send out the presentation and a link to the recording afterwards for anyone who misses it. And Shelley, and yeah, please put your contact details in the chat, and that'll make things really easy for me to follow up afterwards. But it's a really busy agenda, so I will get started, and I will move straight over to welcome Darren Bishton from the National Leaving Care Benchmarking Forum.
Hi everybody, it's great to be here this morning. Thank you very much for your time. As Joe said, my name is Darren Bishton. I've worked with young people who have been looked after and care experienced for the last 30 years as a social worker in local authorities and team managers. So I just wanted to set a little bit of a national picture, really. I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing this because there's quite a few other things that really we need to get to talk about. But I just thought it was a useful experience just to sort of talk about how young people have come into the care system and a little bit about what support is offered. So, Joe, next slide, please. Okay, so care experienced young people are those young people who have been looked after by the local authority. Care experienced young people are the ones who have been looked after on or around their 16th birthday. And local authorities have the responsibility to support young people up to at least 21 and also 25, depending on their particular needs. So we want you to know that, because we're going to work together effectively to support young people in this very important transition in a young person's life. I think 16 to 25 is probably one of the most important phases in anyone's life. It's when they actually decide on education, where they're going to live, sometimes who they're going to share the rest of their life with. And it's really important that actually everybody works effectively together to make sure that we can actually help and support young people. And education, employment and training is a fundamental building block for everything that local authorities do with young people. So it's great that you're here today, because you could play a part in helping formulate that foundation. Joe, do you want to go next slide? So the national picture, I'm just not going to go through all the details here, but you can see that at any one time there's over 80,000 young people who are looked after, ranging from 0 to 18, and there's a whole group of other young people who are care experienced as well. Care experienced young people are the ones that have now left care at 18, but local authorities still have a responsibility for them. And you can see here that quite a lot of young people come into the care system through no fault of their own, but because they become they've been in difficult situations. And I think it's critically important to actually identify that, because young people have so much potential, so much drive. They just need a little bit of extra support, and hopefully we'll talk a little bit about that later on when Philip helps us with the covenant. So moving on then. Next slide, please. Falling through the gap. You can see actually that young people very often don't do well in education, employment and training. If you can imagine what it must be like to have moved house sometimes 3 or 4 times, to have different people caring for you, moving from one school to another. It is sometimes a challenge for young people to actually maintain that stability in education, and that does impact on them when they leave school and when they go on to further and higher education. And you can see that some of the figures there will say that, you know, most young people fall behind a little bit through no fault of their own, but the system and structures sometimes doesn't support them in the way that it could do. We're working really hard to make sure that happens, that we can fill the gaps, but it's really important to know. So the work that you do, the work that we do, is really the safety net. So as young people sometimes fall through the gap, we can provide the safety net to help and support them. And your role in this really important provision is critical. Next slide, please. So despite some of the things I've already talked about, there are really good indicators that young people have done pretty well, even over the last 2 years of the pandemic. So loneliness and isolation is something that's actually impacted on us all, and young people have experienced that as well. But generally, they've done relatively well. And in Cambridgeshire, you can see here on the last point there, we talked about NEET young people, not in education, employment and training, is 33%, and the national average is 41%. So in Cambridgeshire, there is a really positive approach to this, and people are really making a big effort and actually getting the results, but we still need to do more. And that's why at the bottom of this slide, I've said, can you play your part as a good corporate parent to develop these services? This is what local authorities do. They should be a corporate parent. And let's get rid of the concept of corporate. Let's talk about being a good parent. And it's really important that we actually think about the skills, the ability of our young people and their potential, and how we can enhance that to make sure that we can provide the best support we can for them, those young people, to fulfill their dreams. Should we go to the next slide? So the Children's Act 2017, a lot of the work that local authorities do is wrapped up in legislation. There's quite a recent piece of legislation, which is the Children's Social Work Bill. It identifies the local offer, and the local offer has to be published by every local authority, and it details the support that they're going to provide to their children or our children to make sure that actually they're maximising their potential. So every local authority will have a local offer, and it will detail some of the plans. So when you're talking to the local authority about what support those young people can receive, think about the local offer, get it out, go on the website, see what it does, because there's quite a lot that local authorities can do, both practically and emotionally, to support young people. And going back to that bottom line where the mantra is this good enough for my own child? This is the cornerstone of everything that we do. So please think about that when you're working with young people, when you're working with your partners, to make sure that we can actually maximise the support. Joe, next one. So that's me done, guys. That was a very whistle-top tour. Normally I spend about 3 hours or more talking about that, so I apologise that it's been brief, but I just wanted to set out a national idea and actually put things in perspective from you. So I'm now going to finish. We're now going to ask Sarah Jo to come in and for the virtual school, and she can pick up the next part of that. Thanks very much, and hopefully talk to you soon.
Thanks, Darren, and thanks everyone for coming. It's lovely to be able to speak to you today. A quick definition of a virtual school is probably helpful to begin with. Not many people are really familiar with them. So within each local authority, there's a virtual school, and our job is to champion the education of children in care. So that's children aged 2 to 18. And we offer training and we challenge schools and colleges on behalf of our children. It's that thought again, as Darren mentioned, that, you know, is it good enough for our children? So that we're checking they have the right support in education for themselves. And part of that is a detailed personal education plan that happens 3 times a year with the child, their carers and other professionals. And we use that to see if they're on track, to see if they've got the right support in place. If not, we can take action. And a big part of that is the long-term planning and thinking about the future for that child. We also train schools to understand more about working with children who've experienced trauma so that their needs are met and that long-term planning starts to take place. So my role is I'm lead for the Aspirations project at the virtual school, and my work is about building up confidence and resilience in our children and building an understanding of careers and educational pathways for them from quite early on so that it's built in. So we provide things like mentoring and after school club for unaccompanied asylum seeking children, summer activities to have a taste of sports, a taste of arts, short courses like youth work and first aid, careers education, and we also work with schools and foster carers to get the conversation about aspirations going. And that's also that our children have the choices and opportunities that we'd wish them to have as good corporate parents. It's what any parents would want for their children. We have about 560 children in care in Cambridgeshire. So the other part of my role that's really key is working in partnerships so that we're doing the best for those children and their individual needs. So in terms of our meeting here today, we know from research that the more activities, clubs, work experience children take part in, the better they're going to do in education and work. And that's very measurable. And unfortunately, those extracurricular activities are something our children in care generally have less access to. All sorts of reasons for that, from placement moves to transport. And they're also, unfortunately, less likely to have a wide range of informal careers advice from family and friends. So that affects their ability to do longer term planning. Now, last term, in the autumn term, we asked all our children what they'd like to do in the future and what they thought the next steps to that might be. At secondary age, construction was in the top 4, which was great. And that also reflects what our care leavers talk about. And Rebecca will come back to that. But there was a real gap in knowledge about next steps and pathways. How do I get there? So that's where we need to work together with people such as yourselves to change that, to fill that gap, to open things up for care experienced children. They are interested in construction careers and they have a lot to offer, but they just don't know where to start. So that's our starting point. Next slide, please, Jo. So I just wanted to have a quick look at the sorts of things that help children do well and think through careers. We get a picture of ourselves in the future as children in all sorts of ways. And again, it's important to remember that children in care can miss out on some of these. It's not a lack of something in them. They literally haven't had those experiences. So with careers, we're all playing catch up. So looking at the slide, career conversation sounds ever so formal, but this can just be about career kitchen table, what if sort of conversations with an interested adult. So what jobs are there in construction? What does that look like? What does it feel like? And what do you do day to day? And again, experiences can be as simple as nursery construction toys and dress up at a really early age. It's about careers being part of that child's world from an early age so they can start to explore and have a think about their likes and dislikes. In terms of support and guidance, that's about getting the right information to the child at the right time. And we're just developing more access to careers advice for our children. We know that they benefit from more sessions than they generally get in schools. So that's something that we're actually able to act on and bring forward for them in this academic year. So that's exciting for us. Employability skills is another place that we're trying to address the gaps. So we're working with regions of learning in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough on a scheme to do digital badging to help our young people recognise their skills. So that might be that they've got skills in teamwork, in timekeeping, in customer services and in helping others. So our children in particular can find feedback sometimes actually very difficult to understand and to handle. And they can also struggle to understand their own strengths. So a digital badge acts as feedback for them and also proof of having gained those skills. They can take that and show it to employers, and it becomes part of their history and their understanding of themselves and who they are and what they're good at. So you might get a badge, for example, if you were a young sports leader at school or a class rep, or if you're in the football team. So it is evidence of real skills building up. It's not just badges for everybody. And we're hoping in the future to badge work experience so that we can really work with employers to specify what sorts of skills and standards that young person has reached. Again, they can have that for themselves and they can take that to employers as well. And then in terms of knowledge of the sector and of pathways, we can do a certain amount of this with careers work in schools. But to bring things alive and get those real light bulb moments, and that moment when you see a child's really engaged with an idea, we need to work much more with yourselves, with employers. Next slide, please, Jo. So, what was I building up to? This is the part where I'd really like you to think about what you could potentially do to help children in care get more understanding about the construction sector and to build that into their long-term planning from an early age. Please do speak to Jo at the end or afterwards if you'd like me to get in touch to discuss any of the sorts of activities that are on the slide, or if you've got ideas of your own, we're really open to ideas. So I should tell you the most engaged I've ever seen my students in further education was when we had employers in. It was fascinating to watch. It's a very powerful tool in helping them to imagine themselves in the future, but they also had loads of questions. They were really switched on. They conducted themselves in a really professional way. So that was showing that it was meaningful. It was very interesting to me. So if you already speak in schools or if you're an enterprise champion, please consider speaking to us. We can help you to find a class to speak to that includes a child in care who'd love to hear from you. If you can provide a hands-on activity or for older students, even a live brief over several lessons, those lessons are exciting. They're remembered by students. They're a really good way to promote the sector in a fun way, bring out people's competitive sides, get them doing and getting them thinking rather than talking to them. You could also show us your workplace on Zoom, even better with an apprentice or someone at the start of their career. What amazing, insightful advice might they have for somebody younger? What would they like people to know? You could be on a careers panel, or you could just meet a small group of people to talk about your working day. And of course, we'd love you to consider workplace visits or work experience for this younger group as well. It's a very valuable activity to them. Again, in further education, where work experience is compulsory, I could generally tell when someone had started their work experience. And that was because of how they related to adults and to their course in a different way. So it's that stepping stone to build employability skills, which as employers you know about already with the young people that you work with. It can feel a bit daunting and we can feel like there's barriers working with younger age groups for work experience, but we're here to help and support you, make sure you're not on your own with things like risk assessments and doing putting together a programme that's suitable for young people. It can be a very short period of time, but a very good experience for them as well. So lots of information in there. Thank you very much for listening, and do speak to Jo if you'd like to help us work with children in care. And I'm now going to pass things over to Rebecca McCallum from the Leaving Care team, who's going to talk about care leavers.
You're on mute. Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you now, Rebecca.
Okay, sorry. I've got IT issues, but that's my issue. Yes, sorry. I'm Rebecca, and my role is to pick up where the virtual school kind of drops off. So I work with our care leavers, our 18 to 25-year-old young people, and do the education, training, and employment role. And so this is the point where young people are moving on very much into the world of work. And I think right at the beginning, Darren mentioned, you know, that young people come into care for a wide variety of reasons, very often not their fault. You know, neglect and abuse by family is my biggest category. But there's one group of care leavers that I think it's worth highlighting, and these are our unaccompanied asylum seeking children. So these are young people who come to the UK under the age of 18 without their parents. And as a county council, we support quite a considerable group of these young people. And this is Daniel. So Daniel is one of our care leavers who came to us as an unaccompanied asylum seeking person. So Daniel comes originally from Eritrea, which, if you don't know much about Eritrea, is kind of like the North Korea of Africa. So it's not a great place. And there are a lot of Eritreans actually living abroad. And Daniel has been with us since he's about 15, I think 16 years old. And he now lives in semi-independent accommodation. So he lives in one of our hostels in Cambridge. It's very typical for our care leavers to be in independent or semi-independent provision. And that makes care leavers very different from a lot of young people of their own age who are still living in family environments. And so I kind of asked Daniel, you know, what he would want an employer to know about him, really, as a young person. So Daniel is studying carpentry, as you might have worked that out from the picture, and he's at Cambridge Regional College. And I suppose what the things that Daniel came out with are probably applicable to lots and lots of our young people. So he says he's very keen that somebody explains and guides him, and he's obviously a bit anxious. What we will be doing, where will we be going? You know, his thoughts about starting work are he's a little bit anxious about how that's going to be. And also for him, he thinks he might need things explaining in more detail, because, as he says, he's new, he'd be a new employee, but also because he has English as a second language. So I think what he's indicating really is that he thinks that he would need a little bit of support to be, but he, you know, for his job. But he's very keen for people to know, he wants an employer to know that he's hardworking and that he's studied very hard on his course. So, you know, he's keen for people to know that, yes, he might be a bit anxious, he might be a bit unsure, but actually, you know, he will work hard and he wants to do well in life. And he you know, here's the young man who very clearly wants a career in construction. And actually, he's probably a young person who will be either next year or potentially another year at college, or maybe in the summer will be wanting to look for an apprenticeship. So next slide, please. So one of the things that myself and Sarah Jo, who's just been talking, have done is we've put together a little leaflet for employers who are thinking about taking on a child in care or a care leaver, and it just covers a few pointers, which is really about thinking about where these young people are coming from, and obviously, you know, a supportive employer can make all the difference for that employment or that apprenticeship being successful. And so we're very happy to send you out. It's a booklet, it's a little leaflet really, to you know, for you to have a look at. But it contains things like, you know, a clear induction, structure and explanation of tasks, offer of a buddy or a mentor, and giving people clear and straightforward low risk tasks first to build their confidence, and you know, and kind of reviewing progress informally initially, allowing time for questions. I think, you know, young people get a bit nervous about feedback. So these are just some examples of the kind of things that we think would help if people are a little bit worried about a care leaver. They come with a bit of, I suppose, a bit of baggage, a few questions about them that you know, that we can address. So I'm now going to hand you over to Philip, who is going to talk about the Care Leavers Covenant.
Thank you, Rebecca. Hi, my name's Philip Mills, and I'm here representing the Care Leavers Covenant. I'm one of the engagement consultants that are working on the covenant. as part of a national drive to deliver the Care Leavers Covenant on behalf of the government. Let's put on the next slide, please, Joe. So what is the Covenant? The Covenant is part of a cross-government backed initiative and drive which they rolled out through the Keep on Caring strategy to help young people from a care experience background to move into independent living. Spectra is the delivery partner for the government. That's a social impact agency that are based in Wolverhampton. And they've been delivering the Covenant since its launch in 2018. The aim of the Covenant, or the overall mission of the Covenant, is to promote opportunities from across different sectors, from organisations such as yourselves who make pledges to support care leavers. And those pledges vary, and I'll talk about those in a little while. Spectra have done a lot of hard work to try and bring together organisations from these different sectors, and to also raise awareness of some of the issues that have already been mentioned in previous slides. At these events, there's examples of good practice that are shared amongst employers. There's opportunities for networking and to hear about the experiences of care leavers as they enter into the world of work, and also go through that transition into adulthood. Next slide, please, John. So our core aims as a covenant is to build on those blocks that you mentioned actually earlier on, Darren. Those building blocks for a young person, and any young person really that's moving into adulthood. We recognise that for care leavers, you know, having a disadvantaged start really, and facing challenges that, you know, adults would face later in life. For some of them, they're developing a lot of transferable skills and attributes for life because of these challenges. But they're doing that without the same type of support that their peer would have, you know, a parent, a trusted adult sometimes who would, you know, gear them on and motivate them and push them forward. They're having to do that by themselves. So we recognise that there's different areas in the young person's lives that, as an organisation and as organisations, as part of this care leaver community, we recognise the need to collectively support in these different areas. Next slide, please. So since the launch, Spectra have been doing great really to meet a lot of the targets that were set for them as an organisation. Particularly in the number of organisations that have committed to supporting this group of young people. I think there's a general understanding as people hear about some of the situations that care leavers are in at a very young age, that they'd like to do something about it. And being in the positions that many organisations are, who have opportunities, whether it's work related, pre-employment related, or even opportunities where young people can get discounts to goods and services, you know, they're willing to help, and it's been great to see that across the country. So we've been able to engage many young people using the platforms that we have. Over 2,500 young people have signed up to our Connects initiative, which is a platform which again I'll talk to you about shortly, and opportunities are being accessed by these young people. We've recently just launched the charter, and as we see, many employers are now signing that charter as the first step towards becoming a covenant signatory. Next step, please. Okay, so Connects is the web portal that we use when we promote opportunities to our care leaver community. It's an opportunity for you as an organisation to profile yourself, and as I say, you know, you provide an opportunity for the young people to know what it is that you have available to them to access. Usually when organisations promote opportunities, they have a general opportunity, and that opportunity is often updated as new opportunities develop or emerge within the organisation. There's a key contact person within the organisation who's a point of contact for young people if they have any inquiries, or for their key workers that are working with them to find out more about the role or the opportunities. Next one, please. Okay, and the care leaver team, in response really to feedback from employers, recently launched an employer-friendly charter. This gives employers more of a framework to work towards, or a set of principles, you could say, within that framework, where they can look at the recruitment practice, how they track young people as they come into the business, and how they develop them. And we would support you in every one of those steps. I will send a link on the chat after I finish talking, so you can access the form if you're interested in becoming a chartered organisation and start working towards some of those principles. Next slide, please. So what does the pledge look like? As I say, the pledges do vary depending on what your organisation does, what opportunities are available at any given time, and where those opportunities are available within the country. But generally, what we ask for organisations to do is to pledge by giving the opportunity for young people to explore the world of work. That might be through career insight days, information sessions where they can get some career advice and speak to people within the business about their experiences of going into that particular organisation and type of support that they have, so young people can get to understand a bit more about the culture and the opportunities or the routes into the organisation. We've seen in some cases organisations that have seen ways to adapt their recruitment processes. It might be simple things like just rewording your JD, or creating a recruitment pack for a particular post that's coming up that's care leaver friendly or young person friendly. It might be that you connect with organisations that are working with care leavers. Obviously, in Cambridge, we've got the team that are on the call today that you could connect with to promote your opportunities directly to care leavers through their services. So these are the types of things that people and organisations are pledging when they sign up. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've got a number of different organisations up and down the country already signed to the covenant and already doing fantastic work to support young people into the construction industry. And these are just some of the names that I'm sure some of you would be familiar with. Whether you're a micro business, a major contractor, or a subby, you know, we recognise that construction has a variety of different opportunities. I think over 160 opportunities I've been told across construction in the built environment for young people to access. So having, you know, those types of opportunities available to care leavers is going to be an amazing, you know, amazing opportunity for them to get onto the work path and build a career for themselves. Next slide, please. So the steps towards becoming a signatory, as I mentioned, we do have a care leaver employer charter that you would sign a form. As I say, I'll post the link now. Once you do that, there will be a follow-up call for you to speak about how your organisation would work with the Covenant team to move forward that process, and then to look at some support based on, you know, your current circumstances and what needs you might have as an organisation. You'll create an offer. That offer will be publicised on our websites, our portal, our app, and that will go out to the care leaver community. And we'll promote that also through our network of colleges, universities, and local authorities up and down the country. Last slide, I think, for me. And you can go on to the next one. Just opportunity now to speak to or to hear from Katie from TrAC, and she's going to talk about the covenant in action. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. So some of you already might know what TrAC is. I know that actually we have one of our directors in here, so I'll just give him a little shout out. Hi, Bob. So it's basically TrAC is a shared apprenticeship service, and we operate in Cambridgeshire, but also now that we've been given the blessing to be a flexi job apprenticeship agency, we also operate right down the east coast of England, everywhere apart from pretty much London. So for those who don't know what TrAC is, we are an employer of apprentices. We're a not-for-profit company, and we offer supported shared apprenticeships, basically, where right through from recruitment to finishing, we have apprentices that are employed for the full duration of their apprenticeship by TrAC, but they spend their time in host company placements. Because particularly in the world of construction, as you all know, that there's sort of project limits, so it allows apprentices to keep their apprenticeship whilst moving on to different placements that we kind of knit together as it goes along. We have always, since the sort of inception of TrAC, have really wanted to support the vulnerable. We've done it through various methods, through sort of funded projects, but also through our sustainable sort of model that we operate now. And we are also signatories of the Care Leaver Covenant, as you saw on that little slide before. And we're really, really passionate about supporting care leavers. We even had a specific care leaver focused project that we ran in Norfolk a couple of years ago. I personally, as the operations manager for TrAC, I also have a really close to me wanting to support care leavers, because I used to do, when I did my own apprenticeship, I worked in the Norwich leaving care team for a little while as well. Well, we're really big about social value and kind of using communities to help build up and help construction and the built environment apprentices sort of work towards being sort of in their own community, working in their community, etc. And we offer wraparound support completely the way for both the young person and the business. Next slide, please. I promise I'll be really quick because I know we're getting tight on time. So just some thoughts as kind of an employer who supports care leavers, because once again, we employ care leavers through TrAC, but we also, within our own team that works on the TrAC project, we have a number of our staff that are care leavers themselves. One of them is one of my apprenticeship mentors who works in Norfolk and Suffolk, and she's really keen to support other sort of care leavers and get them apprenticeship ready. So these are just some of my thoughts really that I thought I'd share with you as other businesses that might be thinking about sort of supporting care leavers in the workplace. It's just that, like anybody else, care leavers are people who have all had different experiences in their lives that affect their lives, and that's just something to bear in mind. Sometimes there's the sort of the temptation to single them out, but just like anyone, the different things that happen in our lives do affect us. So it's just having that knowledge sometimes is just kind of makes you feel a bit more grounded and not thinking that they're completely separate to everybody else. They are like everybody else. As previously mentioned, they probably don't have the same sort of support networks that people might typically have. So actually having more of a support network within the workplace and supported schemes, etc., is really, really important and can really help them in their development. As an employer, it takes understanding, but also the time to teach. So just understanding that actually maybe you might need to go through things. I think when Rebecca was talking about Daniel, sometimes you might have to go over things a couple more times and not get frustrated with that. And just having that sort of knowledge will help you get the very best out of your young person as in their apprenticeships, etc. This is a really big sort of thing for us, is not setting people up for failure as well, because these young people, like we say, they're very resilient, but they have been going through things, and the last thing you want to do is throw them completely in the deep end without a paddle and kind of set them up for failure. So the way in which we work is kind of really setting up those pre-employment sort of checks, checking if they're ready for this opportunity. If they're not ready, are there other sort of places that they can engage with in the meantime to get a bit ready? Can they do a sort of a slower build up to becoming a full-time employee, because going into the world of full-time work can be a bit of a shock to the system. Having awareness within teams without ostracizing. So this kind of goes back to my point previously, is you don't want any care leavers that you take on to feel like they're separate to people, to feel like they're different, because they've probably felt like that for a lot of their life, not having those sort of what we call the typical family lives as such. So actually just building up general awareness within your teams without kind of singling people out is really important, so that if anything ever does come up in conversation, people aren't shocked or kind of don't know what to do. And it really helps, and this is what's helped with like TrAC especially, it really helps to have supportive leaders and directors. I know one of the directors, Sally, who sort of helps set up TrAC with some of the other directors, she's always had a really big passion to help the more vulnerable young people. And through our supported apprenticeships, we've gone kind of, I would definitely say, above and beyond to keep people within their placements. And when placements break down, we then find them the next step. And that does happen, so that's really important. So we will continue to fight their corner as long as we keep going. Thank you, that's great. Next slide. So this is just a really short case study on one of our previous apprentices. I'm going to call him DS. This is actually a picture from our front website, so he's a bit of a poster boy when it comes to this. So he was a care leaver, and I believe he started with us when he was 17 years old. He was living sort of semi-independently in supported lodgings. And there was definitely a few bumps along the road, a few wobbles, as you'd expect with any young people. But a lot of this was due to sort of maybe managing relationships, etc. He was a TrAC apprentice, and in this picture here, he was working with BAM at the time on the Ashford College site. So there was various things that happened along the way. There was risk. I think he lost his accommodation at one point. He had relationship breakdowns. He became a young father as well. So there was various things, but what we really noticed was the grit and determination he had, and we were there along the whole way, and kind of when things weren't going his way, we kind of acted as the middle person between maybe the people he was working with sort of full time in his placement, and we were kind of saying, actually have a little bit more understanding, this is kind of going on, without giving the too much detail that he didn't want to share. It's a great success story actually, because once he completed his apprenticeship, he went on to becoming a assistant site supervisor for another construction company. And this is just a little bit of feedback that he gave to TrAC after when he completed, and he just basically was saying a really big thank you, that he could have been jobless and possibly homeless. We fought his corner, and basically we treated everyone as if he was like anybody else as well. So I think that's a really important thing, is that actually as an employer as well, you can't just let people get away with stuff all the time. You've got to show them, and that's part of the teaching and learning, is learning about those boundaries, because they might not have had that growing up. So thank you. That was my very whistle-stop tour. If anyone wants to get in contact with me, you're more than welcome, and I'll pass over to Joe.
Thank you, Katie. Can you hear me okay now? I've come off mute, right?
Yes.
Presentation on. Yeah, so thank you. You know, I know we've just gone through a lot of information. We've thrown a lot of information at you very quickly there, but I really hope we've given you a good bit of background for our young people, a good bit of understanding for the path our young people are taking. I mean, being 18 can be tough for anyone, but for our young people, it really can be quite challenging. So, you know, we have actively identified that some of our young people who have been through care are really passionate about construction. So, you know, I hope you've kind of picked up on a few of the different things, and you know, we're really looking to start the conversation, and we want to just talk to you as well to say that, you know, you're not alone in this. If you're looking to try and be more inclusive for care experienced young people, you know, we want to support you, as does Phil from the Care Leavers Covenant, as does TrAC, as does the National Leaving Care Benchmarking Forum. You know, we are a kind of a support network that would hold you in this as well. As a local authority, you know, our care leavers, as Darren said at the start, have a named person advisor who will be helping them. We've got Rebecca McCallum, who talked earlier, who is our education, employment and training coordinator. So she works with different organisations. She offers careers guidance. She can really kind of help guide our young people. We've got hardship funds. So for our young people, often we find that they are financially disadvantaged, and it might be a case of they can't get somewhere across the county, or they need some safety boots or some gear, we can do that. We can help them with that. We can work with you on this. We're not asking you to kind of take everything on yourselves. The Care Leavers Covenant can support you. They can advertise some of your roles. They can appeal to care leavers for you with their network. As a local authority, we can support you with the apprenticeship levy as well. We're often looking for organisations where we can look at doing a levy transfer. As we've already identified, our young people are keen on construction. If you're looking to create some apprenticeships, create some opportunities, please talk to us about this, and we can see what we can do to work with you and help you on this. To follow up, I think, as I said, this has been really brief. We're just starting the conversation. What I'd love to do afterwards is go back through the chat and everyone's details that are in there. I want to get in touch, find out how you got on, what your thoughts are, and start the conversation really. And maybe it's a conversation that would be with myself, you, and Phil from Care Leavers Covenant. Maybe it's something more to do with the virtual school for Sarah Jo. But we just want to start the conversation. So I know we've put a lot of information at you. I hope it's been useful. We can send out the presentation afterwards, and yes, I'll be back in touch afterwards as well. So and we can send out the recording to any colleagues that haven't been able to attend today. But I know we're almost at the end of time, but just has anyone got any questions that they want? I know I saw a couple of questions in the chat, but whether you want to put some questions in the chat or come on to put your hand up in the chat, please get in any conversations, any questions you'd like to have now. Difficult. Can you still see the PowerPoint presentation now that I've come off this? Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, can I ask a question,
See the
please?
chat. That's brilliant.
Can I ask a question?
Of course, Vincent.
Yeah, sorry, I might have missed it, but what sort of areas are we talking about here? Is it
Geographically?
Yeah, where you can assist.
So our young people are, for Cambridgeshire, our young people are probably about, Rebecca, you probably got the better stats, but we've probably got just over half are in county and others are out of county. But we do have large groups in Cambridge and Peterborough themselves. And then there are, dotted around the county as well. I mean, Rebecca, have you kind of got more of a guidance on that statistics wise?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Yes. So the majority of ours are in county. Some of them are out of county. I mean, I noticed that you'd put up maybe in Ipswich. Well, obviously,
Yeah.
I mean, we, through the Covenant, or I mean, I have links, with colleagues in Suffolk. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. We, between us, we know the right people for you to talk to for opportunities that may be currently in Suffolk rather than in Cambridgeshire. 100%.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? I know, Kim, you asked a question earlier about adding roles. I don't know whether, Phil, you want to go into that in a bit more detail. Rachel's also got a question as well. Do you want to?
I was just going to ask, do you also have people looked after by another virtual school in Cambridgeshire that you're aware of? Does it work that way around?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there are. So yes, obviously there are a number of young people who are looked after by other, often random local authorities that have ended up placed and living in Cambridgeshire. But we would tend to find, actually, it would be the colleges that would tend to know about these young people. Because obviously they would be identified as children in care and care leavers. But yeah, they're not all the ones in county are ours.
Yeah, it's a good question. So we don't have them on our radar as such. So, there's a few things that we've worked on recently which have kind of been offers for all care leavers in Cambridgeshire, but we can't always see others that are in Cambridgeshire. But, through kind of an inclusion, through application process, if there's any way of kind of them being able to identify it themselves, if they've kind of got an understanding why. But sometimes they won't want to identify, but if they know that they can get extra support, then they may well do. And again, going back to the Care Leavers Covenant, that's a great way to target young people that will be off our radar at Cambridgeshire County Council, but are care experienced and living in Cambridgeshire. They'll have a better oversight than we will of that.
And just to say as well, just in regards to Kim's question, I don't know if you've seen, Kim, that I've posted a link there to a pro forma, so you can update your offer there. If it isn't too dissimilar to the one that's currently available, you could also just send an email to info@mycovenant.org.uk. I'll just post again the email there for you in the chat.
So I know we've gone over time a bit, but is there anything else that anyone else would like to talk about at all? If not, I'll follow up and, you know, I'll get a bit of feedback from yourself, see how useful you thought, see if you want to know a bit more, see if there's anything you can do. You know, if you've got my detail, if you've got Phil's, if you've got anyone else's details here, you know, if something comes up in the future, please do get back in touch with us, you know, and let's just work together to see how we can support our young people, really. Rachel, that's absolutely fine. What I'll do is I'll send out the presentation with the link to the recording as soon as possible to everyone, and then I'll come back to people individually after that and speak to you all individually. So, is there anything else? Or I know we've gone 5 minutes over, so sorry for stealing 5 minutes of your time. But has anyone got anything else, or shall we call it a day? Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming. Thanks for giving me your time. Thanks for everyone who talked, and I really hope you all got something from it. And yeah, I'll speak to you all again soon.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
I think Joe's gone, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's off.
Where's Joe?
Recording is still going, I think, as well.
Oh, we need to switch it off. I've switched my phone off as well. Can somebody just? Have you got his number, Sarah Joe?
Yes. Number. I'm not sure I do, to be honest. I'll just email him quickly, and I'm not sure that I can take control of the meeting.
Oh yeah, how do you do that?
Yeah,
more actions.
If you go to the dots, more actions, you go down, but mine stop recording is blanked out, so I suspect.
Yes, I think.
Oh, I've done it.
You've done it.